Some people will ask, what is the Revised Common Lectionary? The Revised Common Lectionary is a guide, a scripture guide for churches, Christian churches throughout the world that takes them on a 3-year cycle through the Bible, touching on virtually every book of the Bible and going through the gospel lessons in a 3-year cycle. The first year is year A, and in that year we cover the book of Matthew. The second year is year B, and during that year the gospel lesson is from Mark. And in year C, of course, the gospel lesson is focused on um, Luke. So this is year A, and so we're in the book of Matthew, and the gospel lesson for today. Oh, by the way, my name is Brian Martin, and what you're watching is called What Was Jesus Thinking? And what we do is we take a look at the gospel lesson that I just explained to you for this particular Sunday, and muse about what was going through the mind of Jesus and how he reacted to different people and what his motivations were. It's just a really great exercise to wonder, what was Jesus doing? It's a great exercise because it informs us about our thinking process. And our thinking process is one of the most important things about your life. And unfortunately, most people don't even know what a thought is, or how it got there, or where it comes from, or how much control you have over your thinking process. Well, anyway, this is a wonderful spiritual exercise, and thank you so much for joining me today. And the gospel lesson is from Matthew chapter 14, and it begins at verse 13 and goes through verse 21. Are you ready? Say yes, Pastor. Okay, here we go. Now, when Jesus heard this, okay, stop. That's known as a timestamp. When Jesus heard this. And in order for us to understand what follows, then we need to understand what came before this. And I'm going to tell you. What happened before this in the beginning of Matthew chapter 14 was the arrest of John the Baptist. Now, you may or may not know the significance of John and Jesus' relationships, but at very, very least, John was an important and foundational person in Jesus' thinking process as his spirituality grew. You may remember that Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River by John the Baptist. And tradition tells us that Jesus and John were cousins. So there's a deep relationship here. And we learn in Matthew chapter 14 that John has been arrested and put into prison. But it's not only is he arrested and put into prison, but he is beheaded. He's decapitated. And Jesus hears about this, and what follows is what Jesus does in response to the death of John the Baptist. This is interesting stuff. Here we go. When Jesus heard of this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. So that's an interesting statement, isn't it? He needed to get away after that. He needed to process that. Some may call this a grieving process. I don't think that'd be too far of a stretch to think that Jesus might be grieving this incredible, incredible loss. And what happens next is one of the most fascinating responses to grief and loss than I've ever heard of. And I think what it tells us is something really important about our lives and how we should think, especially in the COVID-19 world in which we're living today. All right? But when the crowds heard about it, they followed him on foot from the towns. So Jesus got in a boat and he tried to get away from them. The towns heard about it, and he he went ashore. He saw the great crowd, and he had compassion for them. Now remember, we're catching Jesus in this really incredible time just after he hears about the death, the beheading of John the Baptist. And what he does is that he goes ashore, he has compassion for them, and he cured their sickness. And when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, all right, so all this is going on, and it's fresh in Jesus' mind, and Jesus is thinking, I gotta help. Look at these guys, look at these people. They're all wanting to know what happens now. John is dead, and what are we going to do next? How are people going to proceed? It's an incredible time of crisis and change for these people. And when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so they may go into the village and buy food for themselves. All right, so the disciples are thinking, we need to take care of these people. Let's get them on their way so that they can get the nourishment and the food that they need. Now, this is one of the most amazing things here that happened next in the history of spirituality. There's so much discussion about what happens in this particular passage that it fills books. I would imagine thousands of books about what happened next. Jesus said to them, they need not go away. You give them something to eat. Wow. What is Jesus thinking? Well, I think that Jesus is always thinking about ways to help and train his disciples. And so he gives them an impossible task, seemingly impossible task to accomplish. And they are aware about how impossible this task is. And they replied, we have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said to them, bring them here to me. And then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up into heaven. Now please notice how Jesus prays here. Jesus does not bow his head or close his eyes, which is really interesting. Really interesting. And he looked up to heaven, and he blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowd. So they still have absolutely no idea about what's going on, but they say, okay. They start passing the 5 loaves and the 2 bread, the 5 loaves and the 2 fish around. And all ate and were full. They were filled. And took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. All right, so they started out with 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they ended with 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and the children. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's been a lot of talk about this particular miracle and how it came about. But I think what's really important for you to notice is what Jesus was thinking. Again, this is a phenomenon, and it's a mind-blowing thing, and it's beyond our imagination. But what's important for you to understand is what Jesus was thinking and what Jesus did. Okay? Remember, Jesus is coming from a place of grief and sadness. He may even be afraid for his own ministry. But what he does is that in his going away and him seeing the crowds coming to him, he has a response that is totally not within our normal realm of thinking. If that were to happen today, people might say, hey, wait, Jesus needs time to grieve. Give him some time. Let him process this. Let him work this through. Leave him alone. His beloved John has been beheaded. Give him some distance. Give him some room. Give him some time. But Jesus won't have any of that. He has a totally different response. He sees the people, and instead of thinking about his own grieving process, instead of thinking about himself, he has compassion upon the people. And in his compassion, he not only includes the people, but those closest to him, his disciples. And he instructs them, and he teaches them how to respond to impossible situations. And they follow through, and they just proceed, and they just do what he asks them to do. And the result is a phenomenal thing occurred. Now, how this is meaningful to me in the COVID situation and with all of the political and social unrest that's happening in our country is that it would be very, 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 very easy to get caught up into the controversies, the rhetoric, and the ideas that are circulating around in our culture today. And I am afraid that when we focus so much on those ideas, that we forget the main idea. And the main idea is the idea of love. I am afraid that people are forgetting about love and compassion as they focus on the times in which we live in. And I believe here that the lesson is that we need to look beyond all of that, and we need to exercise extreme compassion and love beyond what we think we might be capable of doing. We only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. That doesn't matter. What matters is our mindset and our actions. And the actions from this particular section of the New Testament state that in spite of what has happened to you or what you hold to be dear in your own heart and your own mind, that you and I must look beyond that to the compassionate and loving response, because the people in the COVID-19 social and political unrest era in which we live in now need our compassion and our love more than anything else. Love truly is the most important thing, and it's the most important thing that we could ever do. Here's a challenge for you. Change your thinking. And instead of focusing on all of the terrible and awful events that are going on around us today, change your thinking and focus on compassion and love instead. And then see what kind of miracles are performed as you reach out and touch and support and care for and respond in love to everybody around you. I think you'll be amazed by the results. Well, that's what I have for you today. My name is Brian Martin, and this is What Was Jesus Thinking? And I will connect a link after I'm done here processing all of this. And that link will take you to my YouTube page where you can watch all of the videos that I've done for a long time now and hear more about what Jesus was thinking and the power of love. Along with that, I have two other playlists that I've set aside there. One is from my book, Eternity is the E in Love. And another one is my old book, Oxytocin is the O in Love. Love is Love, and these two books represent part of a series that I've written about. And you'll be able to find them also at the email address, at the the link that I'm going to be sitting here in a few minutes. All right, God bless you. I love you, and have a love-filled rest of your day. Bye-bye.